Welcome to the Space Marketing Podcast, where we look at marketing principles, strategies, and tactics through the lens of space. Information relating to our discussion today and links to the video version can be found on the episode's show notes. You can also find them on spacemarketingpodcast.com. This podcast is a little different. It is two podcasts in one. It will be on both the Space Marketing Podcast and the Endless Coffee Cup Podcast. Our podcasts are members of the Marketing Podcast Network. This network has almost 40 different programs, so check them out at marketingpodcastnetwork.com. Our guest today is Matt Bailey, CEO and founder of SiteLogic and host for the podcast, The Endless Coffee Cup. Yes, and I have my coffee cup right here.
All right, Izzy. Good to see it. I know. Yeah. Oh, all right. What are you drinking, Izzy?
I am drinking Bengal spice tea.
Ooh, what is Bengal spice tea?
It's a little bit cinnamon. It's kind of like a red hot.
Oh,
in a tea form.
Oh, that's nice. I love those old red hots, and I don't see them much anymore. But that sounds wonderful. I have a Honduran, boy, I can't remember what it is, but it is from Honduras. So it's a nice light brew, perfect for an afternoon. Looking at the snow outside today. I don't know if you got any down in Kentucky, but we got snow last night. And so it makes for a nice afternoon. I don't have to go anywhere. I don't have to see anything. So I could just sit and look at the snow while we record our podcast.
It threatened. It just spit a little bit of snow today, but no coverage, and which is a huge change for you. Just getting back from the desert. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your recent travel?
Sure, absolutely. So I've been, I joke, I've been commuting to Dubai from Ohio. I've gone out there 3 times since August. And I come home for a couple weeks. I came home for Thanksgiving, came home for Christmas, and then I'll be going back out again in January. But working with it's called New Media Academy. And the purpose of it is to build, number one, Arabic content. Arabic is about 20%, spoken by about 20% of the world's population, but it only makes 2% of the online content. And so number one is to increase Arabic content. Number two, actually that was number one. Number two is to increase the quality of Arabic content, because the 2% that's out there it can be improved. Let's put it that way. So New Media Academy is tasked with creating Arabic content creators across a wide variety of content. And this is what's so exciting. So I'm training businesses, government leaders, and entrepreneurs in digital communication and digital marketing. But I also work with our content creator team in working with them to market our content creators, but also teaching them to independently develop content, distribute it, and how to measure and react to that. So we have content creators in science, in technology, in law, in fintech, in economy, and just so exciting to be creating content and worthwhile content that really is educational and inspirational at the same time.
The United Arab Emirates, which is UAE, is I mean, they are taking the bull by the horns, and they are determined to become world leaders and respected.
Absolutely.
And not only in content, but in so many different areas. For example, they just last February, they have the Hope mission, which is a satellite that is going around the Mars and getting some great footage. They just led a International Astronautical Congress last year. I didn't get to go, but I so wanted to go. And they also just hosted the space debate, which is kind of why I reached out to you, because you were there when that was all going on. And do you want to give us a little sneak peek about what that world is looking like? Because they are just
Yeah.
Innovative for sure.
I was there, but I did not get a chance to attend the debate. I was busy with other, so that debate came right after the 1 billion follower summit. And that was exciting. That was a Saturday, Sunday. They had 3,500 content creators from over 70 countries.
Wow.
And all the speakers and presenters had over 1 billion. Well, basically everyone there had over 1 billion followers when you added them all up. I think it was a billion point two. Just an exciting weekend. And then New Media Academy, a lot of them went over to the space debate because they were recording it and developing it. I had to do some other things, but the space debate was all you heard about. It was an international event. There were representatives throughout the Middle East, from Israel, from anyone who was doing something in the space, in the space industry was there. And it was really interesting because there were ethics discussed, ownership, really a lot of deep topics that and talking with you, things you just don't think about when it comes to space, were discussed and brought up. And so it's really amazing that that went on. I remember when the Mars mission went up, I think that was in 2020, I think it was, or
February of
something.
21.
21. Okay.
Yes.
Uh, there were posts everywhere because I'm following a lot of our own content creators, and just nationally that was a big source of pride. It's kind of like we've arrived and we're on the stage. But you look around at some of their industry. There's a company there called Strata, which does a lot of work with Boeing and other airline manufacturers, and they develop wings. They're in the country. The whole supply chain's in the country. Most of the engineers are women, and they've got an educational system that they are boosting science, technology, and nationally there is just this real sense of pride about we're contributing to this space technology and we want to be a part of it. And they are working within the education system, the government system, all of that, to build an Emirati presence in space. And so it is just exciting to see.
Yeah, I mean, they've doubled their when I was doing research for our little chit chat today, they've doubled their employment in the space sector just in the
Yes.
last 2 years. And it is just, I mean, it is amazing what they are doing and what they're getting ready to do. They're
Hmm.
going to have another conference coming up in it's the International Conference on Space Operations, and they're getting ready to do a long duration space mission next spring, which is very exciting. And they just elected the chair, the UAE was elected as chair for the UN Committee on Peaceful Uses of Outer Space.
Right.
I
I mean,
mean,
that's incredible, isn't it?
they are determined to go up in a very elegant and smart way. So
I
I
like how
really
you
like
said
how
that.
they're doing that.
I like how you said that in an elegant way. So, the Museum of the Future opened up earlier this year. And dear listener, I have to say, if you've never heard about the Museum of the Future, go type it in, search on it, Museum of the Future Dubai. It is, and they call it the most beautiful building on earth, and it absolutely is. I'm fortunate that where I work is the tower right next to. So it's like it's what you see out the window when you're drinking coffee in the morning, and you can go out on the patio and look at it. It is just, but it's best seen in the evening when the lights are on and the calligraphy around the building is just so beautiful. When you go there, the first thing you do is they put you in an quote unquote an airlock and tell you you're getting ready for a space launch. You go, then everyone goes into a room, and it you're on a shuttle to the space station. So I think they're saying like the year is 2170 or something like that. and all of the windows are video screens, and you see yourself lifting off from a spaceport in Dubai. And you can see, and that's one thing we were looking at is one thing I laughed about is there's a lot taller buildings than the Burj Khalifa. That's one of the things where like, wow, they're really planning on building up. But then you simulate a space flight going up to the space station. You're welcomed into the space station, and they're showing what kind of things would be happening, such as global monitoring. And they've got this massive screen. And as the Earth is rotating, they're saying, here is a wildfire going on in the Amazon. Here's and kind of how many acres, what's the spread, what's going on around it, what are some weather factors, also what's happening here, and there's a storm coming, and there's a few tankers, and where are you going to send them? And it was just an amazing. It helped you picture what a space station would be doing, what kind of experiments would be there, what kind of monitoring would it be doing, and how would it benefit us, and what kind of inventions would be created in this, enabling a practical application on Earth. And so this is what they're exposing people to. They're showing this is our plan. This is what we want to see. And it's a kids museum. It's just amazing. Just as an adult, I was amazed by what I saw. But what it's doing is is inspiring kids for space. It's inspiring them for science and technology to see what's happening, and to see a full country behind this, that we want to do this, and we're going to do what it takes to build this, and not make, but influence children that this is an ideal. This is what you want to work for. That was exciting.
Yeah, most of the museums, they really focus on history, what has happened in the past. But this
Hmm.
particular one is looking at the future, and
Yes.
it is focused on the future, which, I mean, the vision that some of these people from the UAV is the UAE is having is amazing. I mean, it's really inspiring. And I mean, they've got a lot of business that is looking at them seriously. Like Blue
Hmm.
Origin and Virgin Galactic are looking at creating spaceports there. And it's just, I, I definitely
Yeah.
is on my to-do list for sure.
It makes a lot of sense because when every day, like right now, every day is 80 degrees and sunny. There's very once in a while you get a sandstorm, but in general, at its hottest point, I was there in late July, early August, probably one of the hottest I have ever experienced. I've been in Texas for summer, and out there it was about 120,
Ugh.
with humidity, and but that's the weather, but you know what you're gonna get every day. So, for anyone who's doing any type of space launches or anything like that, sand is probably your number one enemy, sand and heat, but other than that, it's predictable.
Well, and you don't really want to be over any population when you're
Yep.
doing rockets because
Yes.
they can have something else happen. What do they call that? It's not an accident, or it's a anomaly.
Yes.
An anomaly. You can have those happen. So
I
we
thought it
want to have them in areas where
right.
that doesn't affect as many people.
I thought it was interesting that in the Museum of the Future, that the spaceport that show that during this, I was looking to see where's the spaceport because Izzy will want to know. That was
Yes, yes.
I was going through this whole thing, Izzy, with you in mind, like, oh my goodness. So the spaceport was not in the desert. Um, it was basically they built another island and put the spaceport there. So it was taking off over the Gulf, and a- and so in that way, it was away from population, just going over the Gulf and some areas like that. I thought it would have been in the middle of the desert, but it was interesting to see where they placed that, and I'm sure there's a whole lot of thought into it.
Well, Blue Origin is looking at the desert to
Hmm.
have their spaceport there for the Blue Origin space tourism flights.
Mm.
So that is a serious consideration. And some of the spaceports are in populated areas. For example, Houston is right there in the middle of Houston, but it does not shoot off rockets. There are horizontal launch options that many of these spaceports are doing, which, like, for example, Cornwall, England is getting ready to have Virgin Orbit take off, and Virgin Orbit's a plane, Cosmic Girl's a plane that has rockets underneath the wing, or one rocket underneath the wing. And once they get to a certain altitude over the ocean, then they can shoot off the rocket, and it doesn't have as far to go and as much resistance, and then it can drop its payload in space in the orbit, some of the satellites. So that is getting ready to happen anytime. We're just holding our breath, waiting for that to happen. And then what did just happen was the Artemis flight.
Yes.
Which was huge. Artemis just got back to Earth, and they went around the moon in 26 days. They dropped off some satellites to do some viewing of the moon, but they were able to get the pictures sent back from the dark side of the moon. And this is Artemis 1. This is like the pre-flight for the big flight. Artemis 2 is going to be a crewed flight that goes around the moon. And then Artemis, and that will be in 2024, early 2024, hopefully, fingers crossed. And then in 25, we have Artemis 3, which will be we will be going back to the moon. A woman of color will be stepping on the moon for the first time since, I think, 1972.
Mm-hmm.
And big deal. Can you
Amazing.
imagine what that's going to do?
Amazing.
To inspire all the generations?
I hope so. I don't know if you saw this, Izzy. So there was, I think it was on 60 Minutes a while ago, but they were talking, I'm going to bring in some marketing. They were talking to someone about TikTok, and they were saying that in China, there is a completely different version of TikTok. This is going to sound, I'll connect the dots here. In China, there's a completely different version of TikTok that if you're under 15 years old, you get, actually, number one, a time limit. You have a 30-minute time limit if you're under 15 years old using TikTok in China. What you get is science experiments that you can do at home. You get nationalistic messages. You get educational content. You don't get the stuff that the rest of the world sees. And they said when they did a survey of school children in China, asking them, what do you want to be when you grow up? Astronaut was number one. Now, what they ship to the rest of the world, the TikTok of the rest of the world has, is the addictive version that has a very addictive algorithm. And what happens now is when you do a survey of school kids in the US, asking them what they want to be an influencer. And the man that was explaining this on 60 Minutes was saying, give this a generation or two to work out and see what's going to happen. And so I certainly hope that this becomes a cultural event that does bring people back to not so much the space race, but this technology, this let's look and see what we can do. Let's inspire to something big. Rather than while I'm okay with being content producers, let's be honest, if you're looking at some of the the big content producers that are able to make a living, it's about the chances of getting struck by lightning, that you're going to make $1 million off YouTube. But getting a good education, learning how you can apply things, even if it's not in the sciences. There's so many things that you can do that even contribute to this. I am hoping that this becomes a cultural event, and it's covered in a way that makes it an appealing cultural event. I hesitate to say it, something that pulls people away from their phones.
Hold on to your boosters. We will be right back with guest Matt Bailey and talk more marketing after this brief message from our sponsors. Well, and taking the marketing spin towards it, we are seeing a trend going towards space in the advertising realm. So if you look at commercials, there are a lot of car makers that have some type of space theme to it. There's even Chanel number 5 has a very spacey theme to it. So and there's a lot of commercials that are filmed up on the International Space Station. So Lowe's did a 3D printed wrench that
Oh, wow.
was filmed up there, and Milk has done some things up in there, and there's just and Hilton Hilton has recently signed an MOU with I think it's Axiom to look at building hotel rooms in space. What does that look like? How does that work? Because
Yeah, that is amazing because I mean, I think is the next step to do a moon colony or another international space station or both at the same time? What's the next step with some of that?
we are not taking next steps. That's the one thing that's interesting about space is that it's more like instead of a next step, it's more like the Boston Marathon. It's a lot of steps.
Everyone's doing their own thing. Is that it?
The last figure I heard was 77 countries have space programs now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And there's so many things that are like right on the brink. We're getting ready to have several space stations that are going up in the next few years. And the orbital reef with Blue Origin is going to be a complex that's going to have solar and station stuff, and you're going to be able to be a private researcher. It's the George Washington Carver Industrial Park, I think
Oh,
is what
wow.
they're calling it. And
Wow.
it's going to be for, so you don't have to be NASA related in order to do your experiment on there. You just have to have backing from
Amazing.
some sort of, revenue.
Mhm.
And then you've got a lot of people looking at the tourist area where you have the Deer Moon getting ready to come out. Have you heard about that one?
And I have not.
Elon Musk, right? Everybody knows Elon
I
Musk,
think by
and
now, yeah, everyone knows it.
whether you're in space or not, you know Elon Musk.
Right.
And he does the Falcon 9 that goes to the ISS, and that's one of the rockets. Well, the Starship is also one of the rockets, and he is working with a Japanese billionaire that they have booked a flight. It's called Dear Moon,
Hmm.
and Japanese billionaire is taking 8 artists, 8 creators that do film, that do photography, that do music, and they're going to be going around the moon. And that is happening, I want to say 2024.
Mm.
So so you've got the crewed mission going around the moon for NASA. And
Mhm.
then you've got this happening. So all of a sudden, these people are relatable. You talk about
Right.
influencers. These are all influencers that are going to be going around the moon. And they're people that know how to take that experience and put it into visual content, audible content that can relate to your everyday person.
Mm.
And what's that going to do? Oh my
Right, right.
goodness. So, I mean, I get goosebumps just thinking about it.
Well, it's really cool 'cause, I think the past, we've seen AI, especially right now, getting a lot of headlines, things like that. So, yeah, I think definitely outer space, moon things are going to be hitting the headlines, and I think that's part of it. It's gonna be getting into the news cycle, and
Yes.
consistently, with so many things happening. So I think that's going to raise the level of awareness is seeing that, well, we're at the moon here. Now we're doing things in a space station, and now we've got these things going on. So I think that that constant presence in the news cycle will be enough to raise awareness, but then also, hopefully bring some curiosity to it as well. Like I love that you're dedicated to helping market what's going on here, because there is such an amazing amount of potential. And just I like the message, especially when you were on my podcast the last time. You talked about how the things that we're learning in space have a direct impact here on Earth. That there's so much innovation that has come from research in space that has benefited our daily lives that we just don't even realize it most of the time. That was one of the more exciting aspects of the discussion.
And you take your phone out of your pocket, and this is all space. You know, the way we're talking is space, but when you check your weather, that is space. Before the 1960s, we could not see weather. We if like a hurricane coming, we could not see it. If somebody from a remote island had to contact us and tell us it was on the way. And there were a lot of hurricanes that caught people unawares. Like there was a big one in Texas at the turn of the century that killed thousands of people because they just didn't know it was coming.
Mm.
And so the 1960s was not that far away. And that was when our satellites first started seeing the Earth for the first time. And and it's really important that we do see the Earth because, for example, we were able to see the hole in the ozone from space. And they were able to change the way that we do things. They were able to institute legislation that made it to where these harmful chemicals were not eating away at the ozone. So space, our view of the Earth from space changed our climate.
Mm-hmm.
And with our climate crisis now getting into full swing, then, how do we measure it? How do we see it? It's all from space. When people get directions on getting to work or check the traffic, that's all coming from space. And it's just in everyday thing that we just don't even think about or connect.
One of the things I thought about is how much safer air travel is now than it was. You can go back every decade than it was in the 80s, 70s, even back in the 60s. That's probably one of the biggest that I'm aware of on a consistent basis is how safe air travel is now. That they can move, they can go around something, they know what's happening. Uh, because I don't know why I went back and looked at just the accidents that would happen, weather related or anything like that. And then also tracking individual flights and landing. That there was, I think people forget just how it was still relatively safe, but how many accidents there would happen through the 60s and 70s as commercial air travel was coming in. And yeah, a lot of that technology was creating a much safer transportation system through the air than we had ever experienced because of that.
Well, and just the communication between the airports.
Yeah.
I mean, they are able to see who's coming, who's going, facial recognition, AI. I mean, that is huge in helping aircraft navigate and helping keep unsavory characters off of the plane, and it's just it is amazing, and we're
Yeah.
able to track all that stuff via space as well.
Let me
So
ask you this. I got a question for you. And if you can't answer, it's okay. Is it true? Is it true that I have more computing power in my iPhone than the first space mission?
I believe it is.
Okay.
In fact, the camera on your phone was started because of these space missions,
Really?
because they needed something light. And do you know that they fought recording the first steps on the moon?
I heard about, yes, I think you told me about this. Yes. That, yeah, the fear. What if something goes wrong?
Yes. What if something goes wrong? So they were afraid of doing the live feed, but it was the camera on there. You were talking about aviation. Well, my second book, I am finishing the first draft this week.
Good. All right. Good for you.
So
That's the hardest
my
part.
my second book is on spaceports. It's aviation is a very big example of why I say that we need more spaceports, because when aviation and airports started to come in, I mean, it was a little more than 100 years ago. Mind blowing that it was
Hmm.
only 100 years ago.
Right.
You
Right.
know, it was only probably the 60s, 70s, 80s that commercial aviation started being a thing.
Yeah.
And it started becoming something that your everyday person could afford.
Mhm.
Before that, if you were going to go on a plane, it would cost you as much as it was to purchase a car.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it was only for the rich and few, just like the space tourism that we're having right now is only for the rich and few. But eventually, it will be for everybody. And there's going to be all kinds of opportunities for occupations. For example, yeah, I mean, we think of aviation or aerospace space as being for just engineers, rocket scientists. But
Right. Yes.
once the tourism aspect really kicks in, they're going to need chefs. They're going to need, the space law, which, going back to the conference that we were just talking about a little bit ago.
Yeah.
Space law is a big deal.
Right.
Who owns what, and
Yes.
how are we going to act? And
Mhm.
so that is a big deal. But your service people, and it's going to be your computer people, your service people. There's so many different jobs. Everything that we're doing here will need to be done up there as well. It's just going to be different. Like,
Absolutely.
how do you saute steak in space? That's going to give a whole new meaning to that word. But
Yeah, I
it's
think that's part of it. Yeah, I mean, you're gonna have to have a whole service industry, a whole support industry. I like to laugh about Jurassic Park, where they had all the problems of a major theme park and a major zoo. Now we're gonna take this to space, and we'll have all the problems of a major theme park and a hotel and a space station, everything put on top of that. Just yeah, the sheer amount of logistics um,
yes.
which I will say that's one thing the US does well is logistics. That is amazing, and other countries are learning from that. Seeing just how and I think that was one of the things, especially with the world wars and how you transport troops and food and supplies and everything. Um, I think that was one of the things the one German general said is just the sheer amount of jeeps and supplies when he saw it hit the beach. He's like, I knew then it was over. Because they wasn't just the equipment, it was the ability to feed all these troops for months and stretch across Europe. So you think about now, we've got to supply all that into orbit. That's just it's mind blowing. It's well, I watched The Martian the other day just because it was on and I stayed up late and watched it. It was one of those things that and it's funny because I'm thinking about our conversations as I'm watching this about my goodness, this is I don't know if it's in my lifetime. Probably not. We won't see anything like that, but a manned uh I don't know. Do we still say a manned mission? Can I ask you about that?
I believe that will be in our lifetime. I think Elon Musk has it slated to
Wow.
happen by 2040. And they're
Political,
talking about
but also the
having
politically, do I say it's a manned mission or do I say it's a humaned mission or
human. Yes, you're
it's
you
a
are so
human
right.
mission.
Yes,
Okay. I can't
I
say it's
did
a
not
manned
catch that.
mission.
No, no, especially since they'll
Yeah.
be the
We're
first female is going to be stepping on the moon,
right.
and
So he's
she's going to be of color,
yeah,
which
and
is
that's
going to
great.
change so many dynamics for the good.
Mhm.
It's just going to be an awesome thing.
Well, and that's one thing I love to see about so many countries being involved. That's why I love the UAE. Um, so I right now I've been over the UAE more than I've been in the US for the past 3, 4 months. And I came back and I went to a school event for my daughter. And it was weird because when I'm over there, I'm kind of the whitest person there. And it's very easy to pick out who's the Brit or who's the Russian, who's the other person on the train or on the metro that and so but you just get used to it. And there are so many nations represented there. So you've got people from all over. And then I come home and I'm like, wow, this is really odd. I I'm just with a group of people who look like me. It's really kind of weird, but that's what I love about what's going on in space and how active the UAE is, because that's not just Emiratis. That's right now in the Arab world, throughout the Arab world, they did a survey asking youth that, uh, what's your ideal? Where's the best place you think you will succeed? And Dubai is number one. And so it's not just the UAE, it's the Arab world sees the UAE as, if I go there, I'll be successful. That's what's going to give me the best chance to succeed. So you're going to have so many people represented. And that's going to be exciting to see. So I love that the UAE is taking a lead on this. And, it's not your typical cast of characters. It's We are going to see a very diverse group of people leading this, and a lot of different voices, and I think that's probably one of the more exciting things of the developments happening.
And that's what I love about space. It celebrates the diversity. It
Mhm.
celebrates the different people. And I honestly believe that everyone needs to live overseas for a little bit. I think everybody needs to be the different one, the one that is obviously not from there.
Right.
They need to experience that and bring that home. I think it changes the way that the world looks. Then it's not us versus them. It's,
Mhm.
we. We
Right.
are all one. And space crosses so many cultural lines. And that's been its whole focus with the International Space Station. That's how that happened, was all that collaboration coming together, all those countries coming together and making something that is grander than any one of us can do apart. And that's what draws me to space the most.
Yeah, and that's just the beginning. I think we're
Yes.
gonna see so much more of that. That is exciting. That is so exciting.
And
Um
it requires a lot of content to get that message
Oh,
out.
you're not kidding. So, yeah, and so I sent you, I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, but there is the Instagram account is Iraqi Nerd. Iraqi Nerd. Um, great story. He's a young kid, lives in Iraq, and he was making content, science content. The academy that I work with noticed him, brought him over, interviewed him, and now he's working as a content creator full time, living in Dubai. And so I got to talk with him a couple of times, and he was at the 1 Billion Summit. He interviewed uh, Matt Pat, who's a big YouTuber here in the US, and they just talked about what it is to be a nerd. For the longest time, it was great conversation. His content's mainly in Arabic, but he's reporting on what's going on in space. He's showing people simple experiments. He's explaining h big, high concepts in very practical terms, and so that I'm excited about is that kind of content, and it I this is a pet peeve of mine, Izzy, and maybe yours too. I like that we're getting away from the word influencers because
Yes.
I think that word has such a negative connotation, what's been done to it. Content creator, I think, is an amazing thing because now what's happening is we're democratizing content. It's not one organization or three organizations showing us what they want us to see. It's if I like science content, I'm going to watch them because they do a great job explaining it and I like it. And that's what we're seeing now is this, we're kind of back to the long tail of content that where it was probably 15 years ago. And now we have content creators all over the place, and the ones that are able to connect with people, that are able to show, you know, teach concepts. It's very highly educational. I'm seeing so much more of that, and I think we're going to see more and more of it. I can't wait till we have content creators from space showing what's happening, how this, how do you saute a steak? How do you do this? What's different about it? How does this work? Those are going to be exciting to see that kind of thing that it's not just going to be programmed content from a government or from a entertainment company that real people, citizens, people that are up there will just be making content. That's going to be an exciting movement.
Well, it's that connection. You know, that connection with you're a real person, I'm a real person, and I find you interesting kind of thing. And I find what you're doing interesting and I want to know more about it. And,
Hmm.
the space industry, that's how it was born, is with content. It was just a little bit different. And NASA, they were able to pull all these companies together and get the message out about space. They were able to do hands-on things with space. It wasn't something secret. It was, here's how the capsule is built. Here's the logistics behind it. And they captured the imagination because they gave you enough content for it to be relatable. They could
Hmm.
have kept it a secret. And I think the space industry would have died if they had.
Yeah,
But they made it to where when they finally went to space, you were with them. It wasn't they going to space, it was we went to space. And that's the power of content, is that it makes it we. It brings
that
everybody together.
right. That is, I think that's always been a strong factor. Um, that even though we put our flag on the moon, there's still,
Right.
there's still it's not ours. It's just, it's kind of more of we got there. But yeah, that unity. I have to say that so when I was at university, I was a communications journalism major. And one of the things one of my favorite courses was analyzing speeches that were made by famous people. Martin Luther King, that was a couple of his, Henry V, the St. Crispin's Day speech, and just there was a number of them. The one that I absolutely loved was Kennedy's speech about going to the moon. And I think, and the reason why I loved it is because we don't hear things like that anymore. And I brought it up here because it's so unlike, uh, we want things to be easy. We want them to be convenient. And I love how he said, we choose to do this not because it's easy, but because it's hard. We choose to go to the moon because it's hard. And I thought I always loved that quote, that it was a challenge. And because it's a challenge, we're going to do this. Even though we don't have the technology to do it right now, that to me was one of the most inspiring speeches. And that specific phrase, boy, you just don't hear that anymore.
Well, we didn't have the technology then either. And
Yeah.
we just celebrated 60 years since that speech.
Mm.
60 years.
60. That's it. That's
Yes.
amazing.
So I did that speech on a podcast. I read it, and it was the amazing part about that speech was that, with the exception of a very few things, it sounded like today.
Yeah.
It was still relevant today. I mean, there was a few little mentions of something else that said, "Oh, okay, that I forgot that we were talking about the 1960s."
Right.
Like the example of, we only had, I think he said 4 satellites up there in orbit at the time,
Yeah.
and they didn't know how we were gonna go to space when he came out with that speech.
Hmm.
He just knew that we needed to go,
Yeah.
and so here we are 60 years later.
Absolutely. And I hope that people don't back off of that phrase, that it's going to be hard.
Yes.
We know what we're in for, and I think sometimes that message just gets hidden. Because if we tell people it's hard, they might not want to do it, or they might not be on board with it. That's one of the things I absolutely loved about it, is it was just setting the stage for a big challenge, and you can't get people to dream big if it's easy. Uh,
Right.
So I thought that was one of the, an incredible speech, and I looking at it, it is very relevant for today. And so I think our leaders are, um, they will be looked for these types of messages of what are we going to deal with, and we embrace the challenge. This is what's going to happen. So I think that was one of the things I absolutely loved about that class was hearing that, and boy, how it applies today is just amazing.
I mean, it just, it took my breath away, you know? And I think if things are easy, we like easy in our day-to-day lives, in our working through things, but we really don't like easy because it does kill dreams.
Hmm.
If you know that every day is going to be the same, that doesn't really get you some juice to get up in the morning. And that's one of the reasons why I'm doing a lot of what I'm doing. I do Space for Kentucky and in the podcast is because I want to inspire people that when they pick their career and they get up in the next day, the next morning to get ready for work, they're like, yes, I can't wait to do this. And, you know, I think that's missing from a lot of things. And we need
Absolutely.
hard. We need hard.
Well,
We
and
thrive on hard.
we do. That's what makes us human. Absolutely. Hard means there's going to be sacrifice. Hard
Yes.
means you're going to have to make decisions to put things off for now. Things that you may want to buy, things that you may want to do, you're going to have to put them off to later. And that is the definition of maturity. Maturity is when you are making decisions according to your future and knowing that this isn't good now. It will be good later. And so you're working towards a goal, and that will require sacrifice. It'll require you to focus your attention. You're not going to be able to do the things you want to do if you want to achieve that. And yeah, to a degree, I think we've lost some of that. Especially when everything seems to be very easy to come by. For us on Earth here right now. So, but I look at it in terms of education. um
Yes.
you know if you want to be an engineer, that's going to be involved in this, it's going to take some sacrifice. But that's where I love even just the rhetoric, the body language, and how Kennedy even say it. We're not doing it because it's easy, but because it's hard. I
Yes.
coming from New England, New England, he got married. Actually, he and Jackie O got, I'm still gonna say Jackie O. Jackie got married uh, a, a mile and a half from my grandmother's house. And
Oh,
my
wow.
aunt went down to go see the wedding. She and showed me where she stood in order to see them coming out of the church. So that's my generational brush with greatness. But just the way he said it, that like you said, it just gives you goosebumps because it's this preparatory speech for what's coming.
And I think that here, when you compare influencers to content creators in your terms, that's one of the difference. Influencers are like the cool kids,
Mhm.
and you're kind of lucky if you get to be there. But content creators means you got skin in the game.
Yeah.
It is hard. You're creating something from nothing. And it just has a whole different connotation, whole different feel. And that that inspires. It's like, yeah, I'm going to have to sacrifice. Creating something's not easy. Where being an influencer, if I do a little dance and I can get
Yeah.
1,000 likes off of it. Well, that's not sustainable.
No, not at
And
all. Not at all.
but content creators, being a creator of something that is sustainable. You're making the world a different place, and that can get you excited. One of the kids, I work with a lot of kids with Civil Air Patrol, and some of them told me as when I would ask them, "What do you want to do?" And I remember one in particular said, "Well, I'll think about it when I turn 18." It's like, no, you need to be kind of thinking about it now.
Wow, yeah.
and if you you expose them to different careers. Another cadet, we went to a museum, and from there, he was able to see how things were put together, and he is an airplane mechanic now
Nice.
because he was exposed to that at a
Hmm.
younger age, and it gave him excitement to learn, to say, okay, these are the classes I need to take in order to do what I want to do.
Yeah.
So, and I think space does that. It inspires. It inspires. It is hard. And when you reach the top of that mountain or in that orbit, you've known you've done something hard and you can be proud of it. And that's why I love space. It's inspiring.
I like the distinction, yeah, again, you made about the influencer and content producer. And that's one thing that advertisers are starting to figure out as well. That just because you call yourself an influencer, you may have a million people following you, but do you truly influence?
Right.
Do you truly have a connection? Do those people care if they see your content tomorrow or next week? Whereas a content creator, it's much more personal. And like you said, when you create content, you're taking a stand, you're sharing an opinion, you are presenting information, and you're taking the chance. It could be wrong, it could be outdated. You are taking a bigger risk to create content around a specific subject. And what I love about this though is, and especially what we're doing in the UAE, is we have content creators in economy and finance. So that meant he's now applying his education into creating digital content. And he, the amount of people following someone teaching the economy, so and now who has greater influence? Someone doing a dance or someone teaching you about money and investing and the economy in a language you can understand? Uh,
Right.
so yeah, the content creators, the producers, and especially we're seeing more and more people in science creating content. And that to me is exciting. It's one of those shifts that I love seeing in the industry, and I truly hope it continues. Part of it is my kids are my bellwether. My kids are I watch what they're watching, and it's really interesting to see just from them being children to now being older teenagers, how their taste in content has changed and who they're listening to and what they're watching. It has largely turned educational. They're not watching they're once in a while they'll watch a gaming video, but it's not the majority of what they're taking in. What uh, they're taking in science, culture. They're taking in, just amazing things that to me, I'm very happy to see that this is as they're maturing, they're seeing much more quality of type of content and things that I feel like I can sit down and watch this. So that's part of it.
Well, and I've been listening to things, and the trend is for more authentic, more real content. I think people are really getting tired of the fake.
Hmm. Yeah.
The Most of us are not in the ivory tower. We're boots on the ground.
Hmm.
And I think that's more relatable. So you can only watch something that's not you for so long before, there's just no connection, and it gets boring.
Yeah.
So real, authentic, real information. I'm with you. It is the next trend.
Well, and I think as we get more space travel, more space tech, more space things, what we're going to see is the application. And that to me, that's kind of the missing piece in our education system is everything's taught as theory. And that was always my struggle. I was not a good math student because I never saw,
The
I never
reason.
understood what it was important about it, until I started doing analytics and calculating money. Then it made
Yeah.
complete sense. Now, yeah, now I can't tell you what principles or equations I'm using, but I know what I'm looking for and how it works. And that's what I'm hoping is as space makes things more tangible. Here's why these equations are important. Here's why you're doing this so that you can do that. And being able to connect the theory to the practice, to seeing this in motion. And I I would propose, I would love to see that we take every high school science teacher, middle school science teacher, and send them into space, literally.
Yes,
Uh, because what will that do to them when they come back? We need to put our frontline people into this to see the excitement, see the application, because it'll transform how they teach it, and that will inspire that next generation.
which is why the Dear Moon project is so important, is because these are all creators that are going to be going around the moon. But there's also something called the overview effect. And when you look down on the earth and you do not see the country lines, and you see just this glowing, beautiful blue marble spacecraft that we live on, it makes you really want to take care of it. And I think that is the most vital thing that we can get out of space, is looking back on our earth. And yeah, it may be only the rich that can do it now, but eventually, just like air flight, it will be the teachers, it will be students, and it's just right around the corner.
That's amazing, and and every time I talk to you, I'm like, "This is closer than I realize." It is
Yes.
so much closer than I realize. I read an article the other day about colonizing Mars and how it's actually easier on Mars. That I'm like, "What?"
Yes, you have
Yeah,
gravity. Gravity is a really important thing.
well, yeah, we'll go into a little detail. They're saying, like, if you live, like, in a cave, you'll be okay because there's atmosphere. You just don't wanna go in the sun unless you have, like, SPF 1,000,000. Uh,
Right.
like, I did not know. I would have never guessed any of this. But, oh my goodness, Izzy, what a fascinating, what a fascinating industry you are
We
attracted to.
we
Yes. Um, just amazing. I feel like there's something you learn new every day about this that's just mind-blowing.
absolutely, absolutely. And it's going to need marketing for it to happen. That's the key. That's getting what we are, the bullhorns to how things get created, how things get spoken, and that they exist in the first place. Nothing exists without marketing,
Yeah.
because you got to speak it into being.
Mhm. Well, and that's one of those things, I will update you on my trips to the UAE and how they are developing the marketing side of all of
Yes.
this. I will tell you, as a country, they are all on board. It has created a very nationalistic sense of pride about we're on the world scene. And so that marketing job was easy. I'll say that. But I'll be very interested to see how it develops from there. And honestly, I'll be interested to see how it plays out in world politics as well.
Yes.
Because there's going to be, like you said, that this legal forum, this debate, a lot of unanswered questions.
Lots, lots, and that need to be answered as we go forward. I mean, they're really critical questions. So
Very
I look
cool.
forward to seeing that as well.
All right, Izzy.
All
Well, hey,
righty.
thank you so much for. I'll end mine, then you end yours.
It was one of my favorite conversations that I've had on a podcast, and
Oh,
I could not wait to figure out how to have you on mine. And when you started talking, telling me about all your Dubai adventures, I'm like, ah, yes, here we go. We can talk about this. This
absolutely,
is the bridge
absolutely.
that can connect us to, and take the information of marketing and send it out to the people that are my listeners, as well as space for your listeners. So it's a
Fantastic.
win-win. And
Absolutely.
check out more of us on the Marketing Podcast Network. There are 36 other podcasters that have really good information. Yeah, I always enjoy conversation with you. You're
Oh,
easy to
thank
talk
you.
to.
I appreciate that, Izzy. Thank you so much. It absolutely same here. It's I'm trying to, keep myself reined in here because I'm like, there's like I'll go off in a complete different tangent, but like this has been so enjoyable.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
you got a lot of good stuff you do. So
Well,
anyway,
thank you. I appreciate that, Izzy. Always, always good to talk with you.
And you as well. Please subscribe before you head on over to my YouTube channel for bonus footage on this video version of this podcast. Links to the YouTube and other social media channels can be found on spacemarketingpodcast.com. I hope that you have found this podcast useful for your journey as you reach for the stars. Hold on to your boosters. We'll be right back after these words from our sponsors.